Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 7th day of July, 2025, and it seems that things are moving very quickly in the Middle East towards another military conflict. And let's give you the latest headlines. First, from the Jerusalem Post, Netanyahu seeks U.S. mechanism for approval on future strikes against Iran if nuclear threat resurfaces. And then we have this story from the Jerusalem Post. Israel strikes the Houthi ports across Yemen and the Galaxy Leader ship. This is a story we did last week from N12 News that this would happen, and it's exactly what's happened. They've hit the Houthis pretty hard. And then we have this situation here. Security situation has completely collapsed as Hamas has lost 80% of its control over Gaza. Also from the Jerusalem Post, they're in Doha, Qatar right now doing talking about negotiating some type of ceasefire hostage deal. And as you're going to see from the article, Hamas is basically toothless. They got nothing left. So the fact that they're demanding things is really irresponsible. All right. The main thing we want to do is further comments on the story we did yesterday that something big is about to happen. We want to follow up on that. Now, I want you to recall our breaking news broadcast from June 30th. It contained the following stories. Israel's next war as soon as next week. Houthi takedown on Iran's chilling threat. That's from N12's News, JFeed. That's an Israeli website. And what's interesting about this story came out. We promoted it. We talked about it in there. But then about an hour later, it was nowhere to be seen on their website, and I couldn't find it again. So it was very interesting. It was up there about this war, and this did take place. What's happened? They hit the Houthis really hard, like this article says, but also they mention Iran's chilling threat. Um, then we had a second story on the 30th of June. Nuclear threat gone, nuclear threat not gone, says Israeli expert on Iran. That's from YNET. And then from Gatestone, obliterating Iran's nuclear sites is not enough. And so what we've seen on various websites, Israeli ones and others, that what they've done, that so far Israel's done a great job in, destroying these three nuclear sites there in Iran. But that's not enough. There still needs to be more, and there needs to be a regime change. We're seeing this over and over again with almost every story. And so we did the story yesterday, and this is the one that was the aha moment. This came from the Jewish News Syndicate that supports the idea that maybe something's in the works. Now, the Jewish News Syndicate's a very solid website. I wouldn't even share this story if it's a bunch of kooks or anything like that. They're not. They're very solid. The people that wrote the story are very, very good, and they're in the know with things going on. And just to remind you, here's what the story said. Inside the high stakes summit, Israel is planning something massive. Okay, Israel's planning something massive. Then it says, what's being negotiated behind closed doors at the White House? And could it reshape the Middle East forever? And then, is a quiet military surprise underway behind the diplomatic theater? The diplomatic theater, of course, is week in Washington with Netanyahu. He's arrived there with President Trump. Now, this is their headline and their byline. They seem to know something is in the works. And with the story we did yesterday from the Jewish News Syndicate, combined with other stories we have heard, namely that the eldest son of the Shah of Iran has seemingly convinced the West, as well as the Saudis, that he can bring order to a new regime in Iran, we see events shaping up for another attack on Iran by Israel and possibly with the help of the United States. This seems to be what's going on right now. Now, we believe this is going to happen in the next couple of days, though there are no stories anywhere to be found in the news that indicate this. And the reason we do this is not to become alarmist or histrionic. If you know us, we don't do any of that stuff here. We want people to pray. If we believe, and we do believe this is going to happen fairly soon, then we need to pray because of, like we said yesterday, what could be the outcome of all this if the U.S. and or Israel and or the U.S. probably put it that way, again, goes after Iran's leadership, goes after them by the neck and wants to make a regime change. You've got Russia, you've got China, and you've got North Korea that might have something to say about it. That particularly China, who's really got their feelers deep into Iran. They're very their infrastructures. They're big time in Iran, so they might fight back in some way. Because remember, during the 12-day war, this is what was interesting. And we mentioned this and didn't get much news. At least 21 planes from China came into Iran. They got into Iranian airspace and they disappeared. Now, Were they bringing something in or taking something out or doing both? We just don't know. So anyway, that all remains to be seen. All right. Again, we ask you to pray. If there is an attempt to install a new regime in Iran, it will certainly be a chaotic situation. Again, we'll keep you posted with the latest, but it just looks like all this coming together at this time is not just a coincidence. And we'll report what happens. And this is just how we see it. All right. So here's how the headlines read this morning. Netanyahu seeks U.S. mechanism for approval on future Iran strikes if nuclear threat resurfaces. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Actually, I was going to lead with this story yesterday in the second broadcast of breaking news until I saw the one from the Jewish News Syndicate saying something's about to happen in the Middle East. It's going to change it forever and it's going to be massive and they've got a surprise, et cetera, et cetera. So we changed. We shifted gears and put that story first. All right, anyway, with this story, sources tell the Post that the Prime Minister is seeking a similar mandate to the Israeli Air Force in Lebanon, where there is a prior U.S. approval for strikes on suspicious activity at nuclear sites or involving uranium. Prime Minister Netanyahu will ask U.S. President Trump for a green light to take action against any Iranian activity related to Tehran's rebuilding of its nuclear program in their Monday meeting, an Israeli official told the Jerusalem Post. The goal is to receive a mandate similar to the situation in Lebanon, meaning that if suspicious activity is detected at nuclear sites or there's evidence of uranium being removed from the areas that were hit by the U.S. and Israeli warplanes, there would already be prior U.S. approval to act against it. Makes sense, the official added. Israel's objective is to establish a U.S.-led mechanism aimed at preventing Iran from reconstructing its nuclear program. We want the snapback sanction mechanism to be imposed on Iran as well due to its lack of cooperation with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the official told the Post, adding that Israel wants to increase pressure on Tehran. The IAEA inspectors left last week, like we said, due to security reasons, while Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, has signed a law suspending cooperation with the IAEA. In other words, not only they're claim they're going to continue to enrich uranium, but they've suspended any cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Association. Before departing for Washington on Sunday, Netanyahu told reporters we must remain vigilant against Iran's attempts to renew its pursuit of nuclear weapons aimed at our destruction. The IDF has shifted also its focus back to southern Lebanon, where it continues to target Hezbollah infrastructure after the Iran-Israel war concluded in June. All right, so is this what Netanyahu and Trump will discuss, or are the discussions over and the decision has been made? Now we're going to find out soon. In other words, Netanyahu's not going there to discuss this with Trump. They've already had the discussion, and now they're going to do something. Again, we don't know. We will just have to wait and see. All right, but we know something did happen yesterday after we had our program. Headline number 2, Israel strikes the Houthi ports across Yemen. Galaxy leader ship. Some Jerusalem Post. The IDF struck 3 ports, a power station, and a ship used for terrorist purposes in the Red Sea, Minister Israel Katz noted. The IDF struck 3 Houthi-controlled naval ports, a power station, and a ship used for terror purposes docked in Yemen early Monday morning. The Israeli Air Force attacked the Hodeidah, Ras Isa, and the Al Salif ports. In a statement, the IDF noted that these 3 ports were, quote, used by Houthi terrorist regime to transfer weapons to the Iranian regime that are used to carry out terrorist plots against the state of Israel and its allies. Defense Minister Israel Katz said that the strikes were part of an IDF operation to eliminate the Houthi terror infrastructure in Yemen. Now, this is key. They're attempting to eliminate the Houthi terror infrastructure in Yemen. That's why they hit these sites yesterday and softened them up a bit. According to the IDF, the Houthis installed a radar system on the Galaxy leader and used it to track ships in the Red Sea. Okay, so they had the radar system in that ship. That's why they hit the ship. Now, this vessel, interestingly enough, was hijacked by the Houthis in 2023. It's reportedly leased by a British company that's partially owned by an Israeli national, but sails under the flag of the Bahamas. The Galaxy leader's crew was not heard from for months after they were taken for Houthis, but they were released in January of this year. Houthi channels claim that the group confronted the Israeli strike with missiles, and they did shoot 1 missile later back at Israel, which of course didn't hit anything. It didn't cause any problems. All right. The Monday morning attack comes after the Houthis targeted an international commercial vessel for the first time. So what they did, the Houthis, this is the first time they've hit some type of commercial vessel, targeted one in the Red Sea in that area. So this is why, amongst other reasons, why this strike happened. The attack on the Houthis is certainly consistent with something bigger about to occur. And again, like we said, we'll just wait and see. Now, finally, our third headline: security situation has completely collapsed. Hamas has lost 80% of its control over Gaza. Let's be realistic here. There's barely anything left of the security structure. Most of the leadership, about 95%, are now dead. This is Hamas official telling the BBC. Hamas has reportedly lost about 80% of its control over Gaza, a senior official from the terrorist organization told the BBC in an interview published Sunday. The official explained that Hamas's command and control infrastructure had collapsed after months of Israeli airstrikes, which wiped out its political, military, and security leadership. Okay, this makes, is our comment now, rather hollow the new demands that Hamas leadership is making during these negotiations that are going on right now in Doha, Qatar, again, which we're already told have made no progress. They started yesterday, they're going on today. No progress has been made for a ceasefire hostage agreement. Again, we're going to wait and see what takes place. All right, so here's the bottom line with Netanyahu, with Donald Trump, and both in Washington now this week. We should expect to see and hear some groundbreaking things that we will keep you posted. But above all, please pray for the situation in the Middle East, as it could get ugly very, very soon. And if something breaks, something does happen, as always, we'll be here to share it with you. All right, I'm Don Stewart again. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.